How well do you think you can actually pay attention? There's a lot for us to be paying attention to right now in English 105, between group conferences starting next week, finishing up the literature review, our due date that has of course been moved back to April 10th, and also making sure all of our sources are working well in conversation with each other. Now that we've moved online, some of you might be a little concerned about how well we can actually pay attention through screens. Maybe you've seen articles like this in the Telegram making the claim that using smartphones and other technology has lowered human attention spans to less than that of even a goldfish. That's one reason it's a great idea to take a second to think about what the other people in your group are doing. Maybe you have a plan for yourself, but do you know what your other group members are doing? If not, that would be an excellent thing to check in with them about today. Also, considering today's theme is awareness, if you take a closer look at some of the links in news articles, like this one from Time magazine claiming that you also have a shorter attention span than a goldfish, some tricky questions come up. Now, never mind the fact that it misuses the word effects in the very first sentence. That should really be with an E right there. If you follow the link that they have posted for a study, it actually takes you to the Microsoft marketing page instead of the study that it says Microsoft actually conducted. That's another thing that sets off a red flag for me. Although Microsoft's a very large and reputable company, they're not exactly known for doing research on memory. So I decided to see if I could find the actual study different news articles kept referencing when claiming that millennials have shorter attention spans than goldfish. So this is the actual study. I want to point out it's a consumer report from Microsoft, not a scientific study the way a lot of those news articles are putting it. And here we have the actual chart they have from the study. This is a comparison between the attention span of people in the year 2000, 2013, and that of a goldfish, at least according to Statistic Brain, which I'll make this a little bigger here in the corner, you'll see is the actual source being cited, not Microsoft, despite so many news articles linking to them. As we can see from the Statistic Brain website, this is a research institute that collects statistics for different corporations, like Microsoft. And they're the ones that we got that 8-second figure on for the 2013 attention span for people, as well as the 9-second attention span for the goldfish. Then again, if we actually look at their methodology, taking only 1 second to note that this subtitle should really have a question mark after it, it looks like all the research for Statistic Brain has come through a variety of surveys, interviews, and questionnaires through the mail. Now, I'm not exactly sure how you figure out the attention span of a goldfish using questionnaires and surveys. It could be that they're going around and asking people, hey, has it seemed like your goldfish has been absent-minded lately? Do you think it has more of a 9-second attention span or a 10-second attention span? Then again, it could be there's a little more to pay attention to every time we conduct research.
This is an awareness test. How many passes does the team in white make?
Go!
The answer is 13. But did you see the moonwalking bear?
Go!
Today's attendance question is, what do you wish you paid more attention to? Maybe that's reaching out to loved ones or doing your English 105 homework a little earlier in the day. Whatever it might be, That's what I'd like to know. I really look forward to reading your answers. Please give me a discussion board post so that we can all know what you wish you paid more attention to. It's important to be aware of all kinds of things, not only in life, but also when writing an essay, which is why today I'd like to discuss how we might split up our literature review based on the different perspectives our sources are using. We use an acronym to remember the different roles of sources that we might have in an essay, and that acronym is BEAM. Like we already talked about for your first couple of projects, there are a variety of different sources that you might want to use when putting together a research paper. This might be a periodical, like a news article, like we were going through in the rhetorical analysis. This could be a scholarly article or independent interview, like you needed to find for the iSearch. Likewise, there are a variety of ways that you might use a source within your paper, and we use the acronym BEAM to keep Likewise, there are a variety of ways that you might use a source within a paper. We use the acronym BEAM to keep them in mind. Each letter stands for a different type of way you might use a source. Starting with background or background information. This should be fairly self-evident. I'm sure you've used background information in all kinds of essays. I'd like to point out today, though, that background information is separate from mentioning specific exhibits or evidence, examples, facts, statistics. Besides specific examples, a lot of the time we also use other people's arguments within our own papers. If you wind up quoting the argument of some other great thinker or author, make sure to include this as one of your other sources. Finally, there are methods. Methods are how an author chooses to analyze an issue. This might be an experiment or a set of questions that they ask a range of people. As you put together an interview or survey, this might be an especially relevant element for you to be adding into your literature review. Now, let's take a second to consider the different parts of BEAM with the practical question of whether or not we should eat endangered animals. If you were to write a research essay with this topic, you might start off with some background information, explaining, for instance, that an endangered species is a type of organism that is threatened by extinction, as we have quoted from National Geographic here. This information is factual, and it's more or less just accepted. You don't always actually need to cite it. Second of all, we have exhibits. This once again refers to any particular fact out there. So here we have the fact that numbers of some shark species have dropped as much as 80% over the last 50 years due to the demand of shark fin soup. That is a particular fact that we might use in a research essay all about eating endangered animals. Any specific piece of factual outside information that you bring into an essay would be considered an exhibit. We also sometimes use arguments from other people in essays. Arguments are great things to quote when you want to show the broad perspectives of either an individual or a group of people. Maybe there are people in real life who've been affected by similar issues that you and your group are writing about right now. If that's the case, it'd be a great idea to also include some arguments in your... The methods used in a research paper aren't so often quoted as they are used to inspire an author's own research. In the context of an essay about eating endangered animals, this could include any sort of experiments done to measure the population of lions, but at the same time, it just might be recipes for eating lion. These are a few quick examples of how BEAM might be applied to a hypothetical paper, but for your work in class today, I would actually like you to take a look at this chart that I've put together and fill in the blank spaces with how you plan on using all of your sources. Take a second to realize, are you focused a little more on specific examples or maybe arguments? Have you included any outside methods at all, as is lacking in a lot of different research papers? Or maybe do you have an overabundance of background information, as is another thing I see a lot of the time? This chart is your participation for today, but also hopefully it will give you a sense of how well you're balancing the way you're using the sources in your literature review so far. That's about all I have for you today, but before we wrap up, I'd like you to check out our reflection section. I have another 3 questions for you today, starting with, is there a role that your research isn't covering in this paper? Is there a part of the beam that is lacking? A lot of the time, I find students might have a lot of background information, but maybe not so many specific examples or arguments. When it comes to methods, I wouldn't feel too bad if you're still trying to find some to include within your paper. That's just a concept I want you to begin thinking about as we move on toward the end stages of this assignment. You might have noticed some of your researchers perhaps conducted a survey, maybe interviewed some significant people, or conducted some sort of experiment to figure out what they needed to know. Likewise, you might look at those ideas and adapt them for yourself. Second, I'd like you to ask yourself, are you working toward an answer with this literature review? Or do you need to conduct more research? If so, that would be a great thing to discuss with your group sooner rather than later. Another great thing to discuss would be, do you need to revise your question at any stage? I know that was a concern expressed by some of us in the reflection from Monday. So if that's the case, you should really talk with your group about coming to a more particular research-based answer. As always, I'm here if you need any help with that. See you next time. And remember, even if you have trouble concentrating, you might have a better memory than people give you credit for.